Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. You're watching P3, the place where we feature individuals who have tapped into their power, passion, and purpose. I'm your host, Janie Terrazas, and today I'm very grateful and excited to have the awesome Michele Lepe. She's the creator of Storytime with Michele, and we have the pleasure of hearing a little bit about her story and how she defines power, passion, and purpose. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Janie. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, I know Michele and I have known each other since like the early 2000s, and we hosted a television show together. And we, sometimes when you work with people, it's like kind of oil and water, but her and I were just like instantaneously, felt really comfortable with each other, and we got along like longtime friends. And funny enough, we met in Miami, which is where she lives, but she's originally from San Antonio. And so I knew you before you had babies, and now you've got 2 daughters, and you're married to an incredible man. And anyway, I just can't say enough about you, but I don't want to spend too much time about our past and how long we've known each other. I'd rather get into the awesome work that you're doing now. You hosted a television show that was very popular on the Sprout channel. And
most people know me from The Good Night Show, which was a show that aired every night on a channel, very beloved channel called Sprout. And it was a really special kind of channel. It differentiated itself from Disney and Nickelodeon. It had more of a homemade, approachable, simple, not fussy vibe for the network. And it was a fledgling network. So it was very, untested and kind of trying to see what they could make of preschool and young early childhood television. So my show aired every night. It was called The Good Night Show. And basically my show was a tool for parents to help them wind their kids down at the end of the day. And we would sing songs and lullabies and remind kids to wash their face and brush their teeth. And every night I ended the show with a poem that I would do in sign language. And I mean, it was a very warm, welcoming, soothing, loving, no judgment kind of show. And so it was just really beloved. And it was on for about 13 years. So I started in 2006, maybe 12 years. And I think by about 2008 was when we ended. Or 18 rather. And it was because the network changed. It wasn't really because the show was the most watched show on the network. The problem was that the network decided to change. They were transitioned to Universal Kids, NBC Universal, and they aged up their programming. So they didn't need anything for younger ones. And honestly, I never really saw myself working in children's television. We met on a TV show that was geared for young people. It was music oriented and culture and art. And I was an actress at the time, just like a regular actress looking for work in TV and in film and everything and commercials. And I kind of fell into this job at Sprout. And I guess looking back, I'm able to see how it was meant to be. My personality really clicked and fit with the vibe of the show, with the content and the purpose of the show, even though I didn't pursue it, So my idea for being an actress, my passion for wanting to be an actress was because I love sharing stories. I love entertaining. I love that communication and that sort of bond that you can create with an audience. Looking from a mile high, right? I just never realized that I would be able to do all of that, but for children, right? So I'm still entertaining, storytelling, connecting, but for a very specific audience. So my training wasn't necessarily for children, but it all just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah. And also too, like you said earlier, when something's meant to be, it will just come into your space. And
right.
And you're very open. And even though it didn't seem like the thing that you were pursuing, it was like, why not? And then it turned into this amazing life-changing opportunity for you. I mean, for God's sakes, you were like in the Macy's Thanksgiving parade. I was like, free. I mean,
5 times.
I know, but
It was a huge float.
It was a huge
float. I was at the top of the float, waving to millions of people on international television, singing songs and performing. I mean, honestly, if someone had told me that back in 2003, I would have never believed it in a million years. Like never, never, never. But you know what? Something that you were like touching on a second ago about not about staying open is like when this opportunity came to me, I went to the audition and then I got the call back and then I got the next call back. And then I started thinking, you get in your head and I started thinking, oh, is this for me? I don't understand. This is children's television. Like this isn't what I trained for and what I was looking for and searching for. And I kind of had to like quiet that negative voice, the one that was saying, and I just had to say, let's just see where this takes me. Like, let's see what the opportunity is before I shut myself off from it. And then it turned out to be, completely amazing.
Being open is huge. It's a big part. Right. I think it's a skill really in life. It's a great virtue to have to not fear the unknown. How do you face fear? Like when you feel that discomfort coming up inside, do you have like an inner dialogue that you kind of talk yourself through? Is there a breath work that you do?
I mean, I think it's probably more down to breathing for me. I think everyone kind of has to figure out how they deal with stress and fear and things like that, because everybody's different.
Yes.
I kind of feel like I have to deal with it a lot in my career because being an actor, you get rejected a lot. Right? So going into an audition, there's a lot of pressure. That's your next job. As an actor, you're constantly unemployed, basically. Well, I mean, when I had that show, I was feeling pretty good, but you're constantly feeling like the stakes are really high. And so that puts a lot of stress on you and a lot of fear of messing up. So I deal with fear of messing up, basically. Mm-hmm. And so going into every single audition, there's always like, oh gosh, don't mess this up. And if you tighten up and you let that fear control you, you'll choke and you won't be able to perform and you won't get the job. And then it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you won't get where you need to go. Mm-hmm. So I think breathing is really key. Breathing and preparation, like the more practiced and rehearsed and secure you feel in what you know, the better you're going to do. And then breathing will just relax you. But I mean, everybody's different. I have to do it a lot. I think any person walks off the street and goes into an audition, they probably will freeze up,
Absolutely. And you start to build those like fibers within the brain, the resilience and the courage. Yeah. Being an actress, it really does give you that thick skin and helps you. It's not just like in your field, but you start to notice how that helps you in other areas of your
life. In other things. Yes, absolutely. This is my personal example, but I mean, I take that into the regular world, into my regular life with my kids, constantly scared something's going to happen to them, or if they run out into the street. There is something in me that can deal with that maybe better than some other people, just because I feel like, okay, I can figure this out. I can, everything's going to be okay. I can do this, there's a level of confidence, I guess, maybe that I can take care of the situation if I take a deep breath and allow myself to like think about how to solve the problem.
Yeah. And I think that's another valuable skill to have as a human being is to be solution oriented. It's like, okay, not resisting what's showing up as much as it can be uncomfortable. It's kind of like, how do I see the bigger picture? How do I remain sort of centered?
I talk to my girls about this all the time.
That makes
all the time. I'm like, and I've said this to them since they were babies, or they could understand. There's a solution to every problem. We just got to find it, no matter how, and then they'll come back to me and say, well, what if, I don't know, some silly, crazy thing. What if my bike got run over by whatever and it was smashed? I was like, well, we'll figure it out, What do you need? What do you want? How are we going to fix it? Let's figure out all of our options and let's find the right solution to this problem. They always like testing me on that, but I tell them there's always a solution to every problem. So you really just have to take a step back and see what the problem actually is. Sometimes we think it's this little thing in front of us, and really the problem is over here. We get distracted by little things. It happens to everybody, but it really is valuable to take a step back and really have a bigger picture of what's going on.
Right. It's like assess and observe,
Yeah.
create that little space
Yeah.
before like reacting and feeling like it's the end of the world and everything
It's
is
the
going to
end of the world. It's too easy to fall into that.
Absolutely. And I really honor you greatly because you and your husband are mindfully parenting your children. You're being very mindful of the things that you're saying around them and the actions. It's like people think there's that old saying, it's like, what is it again, where they say, do as I say, not as I do, or what is it?
Yeah, yeah. Do as I say, not as I do, right? If your kid's going to see that kind of contradiction, they're going to be confused. You got to set the example. You have to be the person, the kind of person that you want to see around you.
Mm. Yeah.
We were actually just talking to my girls last night. We were reading a book, and the moral of the story is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? And it's like, if you wouldn't like that done to, it's just so basic and so simple, and they're so young, but it sounds cliche, but it translates to us as adults. I mean, we forget that you have to be that kindness and that goodness that you want to see in the rest of the world. It all starts right here.
It does start here. And I think, more parents need to jump on board in this way of parenting and of being and understanding that this is shaping adults. You guys are shaping our future, and we need more kind, considerate, compassionate, thoughtful, honest people. And your kids, they're like little yous. That's great. We were talking about, you being an actress. But before you were an actress, you were actually working in the marketing field, if I'm not mistaken, or advertising. You had like a corporate job. And I know a lot of people that watch this, they're either already entrepreneurs, or they have this dream and these desires and aspirations to create something of their own or do something different that's sort of outside of the box.
Yeah.
And when you transitioned, because you were living in San Antonio working for a very successful company and had a very successful career, and then you're like, I want to be an actress. Were there a lot of people in your circle that were like, you're crazy, what are you thinking? Or did you have that support?
Not really. No. I mean, the core person being my now husband, then boyfriend, was my number one cheerleader. So that's really what you need. You need to at least have one person on your side. That always helps. It's really, it's been an interesting path. I always like to say everyone has their own path. We may get to the same destination, but we're not going to get there on the same path. So mine started out with a business degree, and I just never quite thought that I could be an actress. Like, I just didn't think that was I don't know. I just didn't think that it was possible. It was kind of a fantasy, and it was something that I could do as a hobby, but I couldn't take it seriously, and that was the voice in my head from the way I was raised, right? From my parents, from my history and my own baggage. And so I always thought, well, how can I still be creative? How can I still have a creative outlet, but put my business degree to good use, So I found a job in an ad agency, and I thought, well, that's a creative place. So there's got to be some people there. I can surround myself with creative minds. I may not be doing exactly what I want to do, but I'm kind of in the right mix. And that started to open up doors for me. So then I started doing community theater, and I started showing people that, like, yeah, I kind of can do this. Maybe it's just a hobby. Well, then they started saying, well, why don't you audition for commercial? You work for an ad agency, when the auditions are, you can go audition. So then things started to, kind of like snowball from there. And then the move to Miami really was kind of like, I felt like I needed to go to the next level. I needed to test myself. And I was kind of young enough where I could take that risk. I was in my early 20s. I did have the support from my boyfriend, and I felt like I'm young enough where I can take this jump and risk. And if it doesn't work out, I mean, I could always just go back, or I could find a job at an ad agency in Miami, or, I don't know. I just felt like I could figure it out if it came to that. And maybe that's kind of like my through line here. I always feel like you can figure it out. when
Yeah.
you get there.
You don't need to have all the answers right
You
now.
don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a big thing for parenting, by the way, having your first kid. You'll figure it out. Like, it seems a mountain that you can never climb, but once you get there, you're going to figure it out because you have to. You know, and that's kind of been my attitude always. So I came out to Miami and things just started to click. They just started to work. And 20 years later, so I moved in January of 2000, and now here we are in 2020. It's been my career. It really has been what I've been able to support myself, support my family, you know, make a living and be somewhat successful at it. But I have to say, I never let go of what I learned in business school. So for people who are out there thinking that maybe I'm not in the right field, you have to kind of know where you want to go and what tools can you take from what you're doing now to help you get there, right? So I had to treat my acting career as a business of me. I'm in the business of me. I have to market myself. I have to train myself. I have to book my work. I have to bill. I have to invoice a lot of people. So I have to do I have to pull on a lot of my skills from business school and from my time at the ad agency. So it's like, what can you take from the past to help you get to the next step, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's my piece of advice is like, if you want to transition into something else, there's nothing stopping you. But just what can you take from what you're doing now and how can you translate it or transition or mold it to get you into this other place that you want to be?
Yes. And I also like that you touched on the fact that you had your corporate job and then started kind of dabbling in the hobby. What at that time you felt like it was a hobby, and then little did you know it was going to become your profession. But you know, it doesn't have to be like all or nothing, you know, it's just like put your toes in it, find ways to kind of flex those muscles in a fun way so there's not that much pressure.
Exactly.
Anytime we try anything new, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But how can we turn that uncomfortability, which is just your adrenaline? Because, you know, there's that fear, like when you're about to get on a roller coaster and you're like, oh, but there's also the exhilaration and the excitement of it. And how can we reframe our outlook on something new and scary as like, ooh, exciting, you know, and sort of adventurous. And also too, going back to like what you said, you're like, what do I have to lose? You're like, let me try, because I'm going to figure it out. And what's the worst that could happen? You know, I love that line from The Hangover. He's like, yeah, but did you die? Like you might feel like you're going to die to try something new that's scary, but you're not going to die. You know? So
I mean, there are some risks that we take that maybe we shouldn't take, but no, you know, it's like, it really is empowering when you know that nothing really that bad is going to happen. I mean, especially if you're smart about it. Like, I'm not saying just walk away and quit something and start something new tomorrow. You do have to assess your risks. You do have to do your homework and your due diligence, and maybe dip your toe in the water. But at a certain point, you also have to allow yourself the freedom to really try something new. I also used to tell myself back then, like, I don't want to wake up in 20 years going, oh, I really wish I had tried it. If I had never moved out here and I had never taken that step, I probably wouldn't be married to my husband. You know, I probably wouldn't have this career. I don't know where I'd be. I'm not saying I'd be miserable, but I wonder if I wouldn't be left with that regret of like, I wish I had tried that.
And you know what I love that you ended up doing? We were talking about the show that you did on Sprout, the Goodnight Show, I think it was called, right? And you played Nina. And people fell in love with your character. They fell in love with you. It wasn't just the show, but it was you and what you brought to it, your essence. And what I loved about that show was that it was bilingual. And I know that you grew up speaking Spanish. You're actually part Spanish, right? Are you Spanish, Mexican? What's your background?
Yeah, Spanish. So my mom is from Spain. My dad's American. They met in Spain. He was in the Air Force. And so I'm half and half. I've always spoken Spanish. My husband's Mexican. He was born and raised in Mexico City. So it's really important for us to raise our kids biculturally, bilingually, really globally. Like, let's be honest. I mean, I kind of moved past, I only speak two languages, so bilingual it is for us. But culturally speaking, I really want my kids to know that the world is a big place, but it doesn't have to feel distant and huge and inaccessible.
Yes,
Right.
that's a beautiful way to put it. And also helping them understand the unity within diversity and finding the beauty in different cultures and language and foods. And that also helps open people's minds. And it's actually really great for our brain when we travel to other places. When the show ended, it was like you wanted to revive that part of yourself. And you created your own YouTube channel
Right.
and Story Time with Michele, which once again, you are uniting people, bringing kids together, creating that bond between parents, you know, that's kind of lost sometimes. Kids will end up being on their tablets, and it's that old school reading a book, feeling the pages that you guys bring, and your daughters are now included in the show.
I think that's why my YouTube channel is kind of resonating right now with more people. So what happened was when the show ended, the network changed. I was like, well, it was out of my hands. I didn't have anything to do with it. Um, I said, well, I have this bond with so many families. They see me as part of their nighttime routine. I mean, you know, millions of households tuned in, and I was invited in, and I'm part of these really special memories. So many parents with young children, and that's such an honor. I mean, it's such a blessing. I have so many people that reach out to me and say, whenever I hear your voice or when I see you, I close my eyes and I think back to when my babies, you know, were 2 or 3 years old and we would just snuggle up, and those are the best memories. I'm like, gosh, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, I'm part of these people's memories. So it's an honor and it's a blessing. And so I said, well, how can I stay connected? How can I keep creating shared moments like that? I did it for 12 or 13 years, you know, part of a big show. What can I do on my own? I don't have a big set. I don't have a big production crew. I said, what can I do by myself in my house with the money I have in my pocket? I don't want to spend any money because I don't know what I'm doing. But what can I do? I said, well, what I like doing with my kids is reading. And reading is something I'm very passionate about. You know, we live in a first world country. We live in an amazing country, but more than 23 million kids in our country don't read at their age level because of many different reasons, because they don't have access to resources, because they don't have, maybe the parents or caregivers don't quite put the value or appreciation, you know, onto reading. Reading is so important for so many different skill developments of young children. Just sharing time with them, reading aloud, them reading on their own. I just felt like this is one thing I can really connect on, and something that I can really try to change, right? My own little way. How can I help kids fall in love with reading, find reading fun, make books more accessible? I can do that. I love reading with my kids. They love reading with me. We have a humongous collection of books. I was like, let's do this. Let's try it. What do I have to lose? I have a few Saturdays a month that I spend recording these stories and editing them and putting them on. Am I really losing that much? No, I'm not. So I said, what do I have to lose? I'll give it a shot. And that was about 2 years ago. And it really was something kind of slow and gradual, and I would just do when I had time. And then I had this nonprofit, Reading is Fundamental, reach out to me. And they're, if you have never heard of them, look into them. RIF, R-I-F, Reading is Fundamental. They're an amazing organization. They put books into millions of kids' hands every single day. And they asked me to read some stories for a summer reading program for them. And so that really kind of like helped me take off a little bit. It helped me get in front of a lot of people and more families. And it helped me kind of start creating more content for my channel and sort of kind of figure out what kind of books I want to read. And that was awesome. And then I had a little bit of a setback last year. I had an injury. I don't even know if I've told you this before. I had an accident. I broke my kneecap, my patella. It's a really weird injury. Ice skating with my kids. Anyways, I've recovered. I'm okay. I had surgery, but it really took me out for a long time. It really kind of was a mental setback, a physical setback. And around the holidays this last year, 2019, I was like, you know what? I need to get back to my books. I need to get back to my reading. I need to be more consistent because people are still watching them. My people are still coming back day after day to my Facebook page and to my YouTube channel. They're looking for books. And I felt like I need to like connect, and I need to create more moments like this for families. So I really started, pumping them out and doing so many more book readings. And then the pandemic hit and everybody's stuck at home and looking for content. And I feel like it just was sort of like the right place at the right time. And this was something that I could do, my little grain of sand that I could put in, to try and help kids stay interested in reading, not lose their literacy skills, because that home learning was so hard. And we know that all of these kids are really suffering, by not being in schools. So anyhow, that's sort of the journey of Storytime with Michele. And I've had another lovely book publisher that has reached out to me to work on a project, Barefoot Books. They produce just gorgeous books with lovely messages. It's all about diversity, inclusivity, global issues, and raising global kids and global citizens. So they're an amazing company, and it just felt like, wow, perfect. And so we've been able to create a whole series of videos together supporting some of their books and their materials. And it's been an awesome ride. And I don't know where it's going, but like I said, I'll figure it out when I get there.
It's awesome. And it's great because a lot of times people focus on the destination, and it's all the awesomeness that happens along the journey. And when I say that, it's going to be highs and lows and some hiccups and things along the way. It's kind of like which is like a roller coaster. You have the high points and then you have the low points, like okay, the trough and the crest. And if you can get comfortable with that, it makes everything so much easier. And I think it's fantastic. They're the most perfect type of company to merge with you and to collaborate with you. All of these things that you love so much, you get to do in this one way to help the world. It's a purposefulness. Talk a little bit about what that feels like for you, knowing that when you wake up and the work that you're doing actually is making an impact. Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't feel is purposeful. And it doesn't have to be that you start this big old project like Michele did, but what does feeling purposeful mean to you?
That's an interesting question, because I feel like a lot of times we struggle with putting a label or putting words on what the purpose is. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's good at that, but I think you can be good at identifying that feeling you get when you do something that is your purpose, or what your purpose is. When you're actually doing it, you get a feeling, and you know that feeling. You're like, I'm doing something good, I'm helping, I'm contributing, whatever it is for you. And maybe you can't quite identify, my purpose is to, eradicate, whatever from the world, or to promote literacy, for example. And also it's an evolution too in discovering that purpose, right? And that's kind of how it's been for me. So I feel like for me, it started as that little grain of like, what can I do? What am I capable of doing on my own? And it's grown from there. So it's evolved. And my purpose is to share books and to share stories. And through those stories, share valuable lessons and morals, and connect with people and help mold, like you said, help shape the future generation, our next generation, my kids, our kids, and we want them to be resilient and kind and loving and open. And I think that I'm doing my little piece to contribute to that, right? Yeah. So that's what I feel like my purpose is now. And I don't know what the end game looks like. I'm also not a person that needs to have a 10-year plan. I don't need to know where I'm going to be in 10 years. I have faith that if I follow this purpose and I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to get to where I need to be in 10 years. You know what I mean?
Hallelujah.
I don't want to take away from anybody who has a 10-year plan, because I think that there's just different personality types, right? I'm not that personality where I can have my 5 and 10-year plan. I have goals. I have things that I'd like to, see and do, but I don't have a fixed plan that I have to stick to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I operate in that way too. And each day it's about how can I experience the most joy? How can I, take care of me so that I can take care of others better? What would you say, because you do so much and you do have a family that you take care of, what are a couple of self-care practices that you use to kind of stay centered in your power, passion, purpose? And what would you say really brings you that power? Like, how do you fuel yourself? What empowers you?
That's another hard question, Janie. It's really hard. I have to say, right now we're in such a crazy time with the pandemic and with the limited things that we can do. And it's really difficult to find time on my own. And that was how I would have normally answered this question.
Right.
I would have normally said that time on my own, going to the beach, going to get my hair done, time on my own, something, just even if it's just 1 hour a week.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's really hard. Like, I have to shift and find something else that I can do, or another way that I can find that, because we're all at home and I really can't find time to myself. I can't. It just doesn't exist. So it's been, for me lately, it's been making sure that the kids are getting to bed earlier so that I can have that a little bit of alone time at night with my husband. Or sometimes we decide to do our own things at night, because you don't always want to watch the same Netflix show, right? You don't always want to do the same thing. And sometimes he needs his time and I need mine. So I'll do like a Zoom with a friend. I'll be like, honey, tonight's going to be my night that I'm going to chat with a friend, and I'll go out in the backyard, or I'll go in another room, and it'll be just a good old catch-up session with a friend. And I have to find satisfaction in that, because like I said, my options are really limited right now, I feel. Hopefully, we'll get through this and things will change and we'll be able to explore other things that we can do outside of the house. It's really challenging though, especially with getting back to school and not having the kids in class. It's going to be really interesting to see how we can make it all work, but we'll figure it out.
I know yoga is a big thing for you. I know
Yes.
that and like stretching and yoga has been like where you find
absolutely. Well, that's like I said earlier, how when I have fear and when I have stress, breathing has always been big for me. Or breathing exercises, and that comes from yoga practice. I mean, I don't practice as regularly as I used to, but I was like a daily yoga, practitioner for many years.
Yeah, when I went to visit you, it's like, I know if I go visit Michele, we're probably going to end up doing some yoga.
Or Pilates.
Yeah, that's right. We did Pilates too. That was a killer class. Oh my goodness. But I do admire the fact that, you have always found a way to do something for yourself, to take care of yourself. And I know that in itself also is a practice, moms over time get a little bit better about that, minus the guilt, because there's that guilt that comes in.
Well, I mean, that's underlying kind of all of it. I just want to, it's hard. I do struggle with it. I want to be there for them. I want, this experience of us spending so much time at home, I want it to be a positive experience. I mean, I know there is a lot of negativity about it, missing friends and missing out on experiences and opportunities, but I want there to always be, the yin yang when they look back when they're older and say, yeah, but I got to spend this time with my family. We did movie night, we did game night, we read every day, we went on bike rides. And so I do have a lot of the mom guilt, because I do want to have those great experiences,
And you've created so many with them already, and I think it's really awesome that you've included them in your Storytime with Michele project.
Yeah, they enjoy it. I at first I hesitated. I still kind of, hesitate. You always like, oh, what's the right thing to do with bringing your kids in to stuff that's online.
Right.
But they used to be behind the scenes, so they would stick around and they would put the books nice and neat and put the stuffed animals out. They would pick books for me. They were like my production crew. My oldest would sit with like lip gloss on the side, and she would say, Mommy, you have a hair out of the way, and she'd come in and put lip gloss on me. So they were really interested, and I felt like, well, this is kind of, it's good for them to see how this works and how I work. And then they asked if they could start being in them and read with me and do the arts and crafts stuff. So how could I say no? How could I say no? They're having so much fun, and I think they're going to be able to look back on it later and think fondly of it. I hope they do.
Yes. Please let people know how they can find your show online and how they can connect with you. I know there are a lot of parents that are always looking for programs like this, so please guide them where they can connect with you.
Sure. So primarily, I would guide people to YouTube. You just have to look for Michele Lepe, and it's Storytime with Michele. But if you just go to YouTube/Michele Lepe, you'll see my whole channel there. I think I have about 120 stories read aloud. I have a lot of different playlists. I like to break up the books into different, groups. So if you're looking for just bedtime stories that are a little more soothing, if you're looking for bilingual or Spanish language books, I have a whole playlist of books read in Spanish. And then you'll see I have a whole, group of, different categories that people can find stories that they're looking for. Also on Facebook, I have Michele Lepe, and I created a book club on Facebook. So it's Storytime with Michele Book Club. And in this sort of group on Facebook, we share book recommendations. Oh, everyone sends me, oh, have you read this book? Have you read that book? So parents who are, or caregivers who are looking for great books for kids can join the book club and join in on the conversation. And whenever I have supplemental materials, coloring pages, word searches, any kind of literacy activity that's going to support the book, I'll link to it there in the book club also. But on my Facebook page and the book club page, you'll find everything. So I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, but for the bulk of the books and storytime information, you'll find it on Facebook and YouTube.
Awesome. What would be one last thing that you would like to say to our audience before we wrap up?
You talk a lot about your power and, your power to use your voice. And I really struggled a lot with that. So I may come across as, confident and capable and smart and whatever I come across as, but I struggle a lot with finding my own power and my own voice. And that happened really towards the end of the show. When it started winding down, the show was at its peak of popularity, right? And I probably had more power than I realized or that I was willing to accept. And so I had a lot of self-doubt, and I had people around me in my circle, few people that said, Michele, you've got leverage here. You've got more power here. You should renegotiate your contract and you should do all these things. And I really kind of had a lot of self-doubt. And so I kind of feel like it's important for people to know that we all go through that. And I don't know what would have changed had I listened, to that power that I had. But I do think I learned, and moving forward, I won't ignore it. I will be more able and capable to speak up for myself. We had a spin-off show. I don't know if you know this, Jamie, or maybe you do, but we created a spin-off of my character. So my character was Nina on the Goodnight Show, and the network created a cartoon based on my character imagined as a little girl. It's called Nina's World. And it was fantastic because it was based on my character that I'd been creating for over 10 years. And I thought, God, this is a dream come true. So I was brought on as an executive producer. And I really contribute a lot to this show, to the character development. I brought in pictures of myself as a child, of my kids, so that the artists could, render drawings of these characters based on us and make them realistic. I shared so many of my life stories with the writers. I actually wrote a couple of the episodes. I was on the writing team as well. And it was a phenomenal experience. But also, speaking of the doubt, I didn't assert myself as much as I wish I had when it came time to claiming ownership of my contributions. And so I think that that's something I wanted to share, because I feel like, it's empowering to hear other people's mistakes, maybe, because you can say, oh, if I'm in that situation, maybe I'll have the courage to not let, opportunities slip away.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to share with you.
That's great. And I really love that you brought that up, the power of the voice. And I really appreciate your authenticity and your vulnerability in that way, especially when it comes to doubt, because all of us struggle. Every person that's super successful, every time you level up, there's always going to be this, are you sure you want to do that? Are you capable of doing that? And you just got to power through. So you have a lot of fortitude in that you continue to sort of forge forward despite those little negative voices. And that's another reason why I like doing projects like this, is to encourage and inspire people and educate people. We're all in this together. like you said, we have our individual paths, but we're all kind of going through what's called the hero's journey, and it's really owning our essence and discovering what really feeds us, feeds our soul, feeds our heart. And that's certainly something that you're doing. And I just honor you greatly for all the work that you've done in your community, and all the families that you've helped, and kids that you've inspired, and all the kids that have learned Spanish because of you. It all counts, and you are making the most of your life. And that's really what I encourage everybody to do, is just make the most of the time that you have here.
Good.
So thank you so much for all of that.
Thank you, Janie. I love you.
I love you too. And continued blessings on all of your endeavors.
Likewise.
And thank you for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. Your likes, shares, and follows are greatly appreciated because they help spread the love. Subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Be sure to tune in to the next episode of P3, when we'll feature Suzanne Zavel. She's a motivational maven and entrepreneur. You aren't going to want to miss what she has to say about power, passion, and purpose. Till next time, peace be in us.